This is part 6 of building a blog with Rails 5 and Bootstrap 4. Before we dive in, I want to take a quick look at what's going on right now and what's coming up next. We're working on wrapping up the Building a Blog series that you're watching right now, and we're also rolling out some new episodes about scraping the web with Ruby. Up next, we're going to take a deep dive into working with APIs, and we're also going to start publishing some content to help you start making some money freelancing. If you're interested in that, you need to head over to techmaker.tv and sign up because that will not be available on YouTube. Let's get started with the episode. As you can see, I've got my server running. I've got my code open, and I've loaded up the app over here and signed in. If you cannot do that right now, you probably need to go back and wrap up some stuff in the previous episodes. And when we left off, we could now edit content and add rich media to our posts. But this page is really ugly, and so in this episode what we're going to do is start making this look better, and it's going to help you get introduced to some concepts with Sass and some styling stuff. To kick things off, let's go ahead and open up the Bootstrap site. We're going to be referencing a few things over there. Make sure that you go to the website for version 4. Previous versions won't work with everything that we're going to do. So back in our app, this page is really wonky, and the first thing I'm going to start by doing is just cleaning up this left column over here, making it look more like what we want. And to do that, I'm going to use something new in Bootstrap 4 called a card. And if you click on card over here and scroll down, there's a specific element in this that I want to use, which are these what do they call them, list group items. So for the moment, I'm going to just copy this and paste it. So where are we? We're in authors, and this is posts and edit. So I think we need to be in the form here. So I'm just going to put it right inside this left column. Just in case you didn't see where that was, let me open this up actually in the views. So we're in the authors directory, posts, and then we're looking at this form file here. So I'm just going to paste this in, and I'm going to clean out a few things that I don't need. I don't need that. I probably don't need this paragraph tag, and we'll save this and just see what it looks like. So what I want to do is move this editing post thing down in here, and then I'm going to put the inputs on each row, and then we're going to clean it up because this isn't how I really want it to look in the end, but it'll at least make it a little more organized. So if we jump back to the code, I think I'm going to need just a few of these list group items, and I'm going to get rid of all the placeholder content. And I don't want this bottom block, and I don't want this to say card title. I want this to say editing post or whatever. So actually, let me do this. So I'm going to yield, and then we'll say page title. That might be what we want. Okay, so up here we have page title, which we're providing already to the title tag in the header, or the head section of the HTML document. This will also fix over here the page title. Okay, so let's see what this looks like. Okay, that's cool. So now I'm going to actually get rid of this editing post. So to do that, I need to open up edit. Well, let me go ahead and just knock out this new one since I'm here. Okay, and then let's open up the edit file, and we'll do the same thing. If we jump back over to the browser, then that's going to move that up, and it's looking a little bit better. I'm going to put all these things inside of those rows. So let's just move these, I think, and see what that does. And put that there. Remove these empty lines I just made. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Alright, that's certainly more blocky. Let's see. I'd also like to put this update post in there. So I'm going to create another one of these things. And I'm going to move this up like that. Okay, so it's looking a little more aligned. And I'm also going to knock out this label for the body tag because I don't think that's really necessary. So why is this gap here? You know what, I'll check that out later. That's not critical right now. So the next thing I want to do is deal with these inputs because they're really horrible looking. So if we jump back into the code, first off, that doesn't need a field class around it. So on each of these text fields and then the text area, I'm going to add a class of form control. We'll see what that looks like. So that already kind of just straightens it up and aligns it a little bit better. It takes away the kind of ugly default styling. The padding is a little bit too intense on these card items, and there's a double border, which I'm not crazy about right here. So let's actually fix that. And before we do, let's inspect this, and I want to just remind you what we did earlier. We added these classes to the container. So we have posts, which is the name of the controller we're using, and then edit. And if we were creating a new one, it would be posts and new. So let's open up the CSS and go into our post SCSS or Sass. And so you can see at the top what we did is .post.index, and so all of that applies to the index page. What we're going to do here is do .post.edit and then .post.new, and that will make everything apply to this form we're working on now. So before we actually write the code for this, I frequently will do some coding in the CSS console over here before I actually do a lot of changing in the actual code. So I'm thinking that on this list group item I actually want to change the padding. So let's find out what the padding is right now, which we can do by scrolling down, and well, if you hover over it, you can see you have this green area around it. And if you kind of look over here at this that's telling you that green area is the padding. And it's a really handy tool. You can see what all the different stylings that are applied to it. So it looks like we have 12 on the top and on the bottom, and 20 on the left and the right. So I want to see what this would look like if I actually just change the padding to 5. And I want to add it on this list group item. That's probably a little not quite enough. If we make it 10, that feels a little bit better to me. So I'm going to make that 10. So I'm going to say .card .list group item padding 10 pixels. We'll save that, see what we have. Close this so we can get a better sense. I feel like that looks a little bit better. I want to fix this border thing here, so let's look at that as well. And list group item, I think we can do like border left 0, and that'll, yeah, okay, so I'm just going to do border left and border right 0. Okay, that'll fix what I want to fix. Cool. The next thing is this button is bugging me, so let's fix that and make that look more like a button you would normally see. So the first thing is we don't want it to just say update post or whatever. I prefer to say something like save blog post, and then we'll say class btn, let's say btn success, maybe btn lg for large, and then btn block, which will make it take up the whole space. Yeah, I think that looks better. One quick comment, a lot of times there's a criticism of Bootstrap apps that they look very bootstrappy, and this will look very bootstrappy unless you spend a good deal of time, you kind of get the layout right, and then spend a lot of time actually tweaking it and kind of migrating away from the just default Bootstrap look and feel. But I'm not going to spend too much time on that here. I just want to kind of get it organized a little bit better. And I wanted to do one episode where you kind of see my process for just getting things styled out. I'm not going to do the entire app in this series. One thing that's bothering me is that the font over here is much larger than the font over here, which we can fix that a little bit later, but this stuff is all kind of run together and you can't really see it. And I think one thing we can do to make that a little bit better is maybe actually decrease the font size just a little bit and actually make this column wider. So let's do that and just see what that does for us. So we'll make this an MD4. We'll make this an MD8. I think that will still give us enough room on the right. Yeah, I think that's better. And one thing, that button is feeling really big now, so I'm not going to make that a button large. I'm just going to make it a regular size button. Okay, and now I'm going to decrease the font size in here. So I need to go in and, let's see. I think what I can do is in here, I'll just do input, not input, input type equals text, and then we'll do a comma, text area, font size, and let's do like 14 and just see where we are. Okay, so that brings it down a little bit. I feel like this text area maybe ought to come down to about here. Let's set that to 100 pixels and just see what that does, see what that looks like. Yeah, I mean, I think that looks a little bit better. You actually have a little bit more space to read in there. Okay. So there's just a few more things to clean up, and then we'll call it a wrap. This headline is taking up too much space. So this is card block. So the card title looks like it has a margin on the bottom, which we don't necessarily want. I'm actually going to set that to margin bottom 0. Okay, so that at least centers it. And I feel like the font might be a little too big for what we need it. So I'm going to set it to like 18 pixels and see if it goes down. Okay, so that is the card title. So we want it's the margin bottom to 0 and the font size to 18. So that's actually good because if we have a really long title, it'll run off the page. If we just said, hello, this is a much longer title that will run off of the page. So it doesn't look horrible, but it doesn't quite look what I would like. So let's do something like, that's tricky. Because what I would like to do is make the edit bold and then have this be a lighter weight font. Interesting. So if we go back to edit, we are setting the page title to edit this. So what we actually need is a little bit of logic over here. So instead of just yielding this page title, we're going to actually build a little element here. So what we're going to do is say if at post.newRecord, which will be true on the new page, because basically what new record does is it asks whether or not it's been saved to the database, which for a new one it has not been. And then we will put the edit here. So basically we'll have new post when it's new, and otherwise we'll have a b tag, and we'll say edit, and then I'm going to do span.thin text, which I will need to make, and we'll say at post.title. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, so that's getting closer, and then for thin text, I'm actually going to put this in here. No, let me go ahead and make a, I tend to do something like this where I have like util.scss, and I need to make that underscore, and then in here we'll, just after Bootstrap, we'll import util. And then in the utilities thing, we need to say .thin text, and then I'm just going to set the font weight to 300. That's just kind of a one-liner, so I'm just going to do that. And that's a lot more like what I was thinking. The next thing I want to do is set the height of this editor to be taller, and to do that, we actually need to open up our JavaScript and set the height in here. So I'm going to set it to 500 and just see what that does, just as a starting point. That's about right if I bump this up here. So we have some kind of, yeah, these notices and alerts are causing some problems. So let's actually, for the moment, I'm actually going to take those out. That's in the layout. Actually, let's do this. Let's say if notice or alert and that puts it back where it should be. Okay. That might be a little too tall. Let me put that at like 480. I have my screen about as big as it can get, and I don't know, I don't want it to be too big necessarily. Something like that. And then our show and backlinks need to be moved up. So that's probably in the actually that's in the edit and the new. And those aren't going to be the same on the two pages. So what is that on the new? So on new you just have back. Okay, so I'm going to cut these. Do the same thing here. And then in the form, what we're going to do is in this column under the last list group item, or under the, let's see, where is it? That's got to be the card. We want to put it just under the card. And what we can do is say if at post dot persisted, which is the opposite of that new record. So we're going to always show the back, and we're only going to show the show with this pipe if it's persisted. So let's refresh. That should move that up. And if I click new post, it's just got back. Okay, so this is starting to look a lot more organized. The very last thing I want to do here is just show you how you could start playing with the colors a little bit. Before I do that, I'm going to close all this stuff. That's not what I want. So we want to open up the application CSS. We're going to create a new file called color, or colors.scss. And in our application we need to require it just after util probably. Save this. And what we can do in here is actually create variables. So I'm going to create like light gray. And I'm just going to store this hex color in light gray. And what this lets us do is just, if we want to change the colors globally, we have a place where we've stored colors we expect to use, and you don't have to go track down this hex code everywhere. So in our posts, in the edit, I'm going to add a .card block. Set the background color to that light gray. Let's see what this does. I should have written colors. So now we have this, the top of this card kind of matches the nav bar a little bit. So one thing we might do is just kind of sprinkle this around. I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to perfect this because it's not that important, but I want to just reuse that in a couple places so you can see how to do it. So maybe you think that inputs look really cool with that color as the background color. And then maybe we want to make this save blog post, have a color like that. So what we could do there, I think we could do, so that is the last list group item, so I think we could do and last background color. That might be last child. Yes, I think that's what that is. Yeah, So now we have the top of our card is gray, the bottom is gray, and then you have these inputs that are gray. And what's cool about this is, let's say we want to make this a different color. We just change it in one spot and it changes it everywhere. Anyway, I like the other one better. Put that back. Now the obvious question is, how do you style the TinyMCE box? That's a little bit more involved. You can inspect it and find all the CSS classes, but it's not the most straightforward thing. They have some more information on their website about theming, but I'm not going to get into that here. We may cover that in a later episode, but I'm not sure. There is one small syntax error I need to fix. I'd left off a semicolon here, so add that. And that is it for this episode. If you like this, please click subscribe. Please click like. That really helps me out. And again, we've got the web scraping with Ruby series going on right now, and there's going to be probably 2 or 3 more episodes in this series, so stay tuned, and I'll talk to you next time.